for the longest time in my teenage years, went to church and I did all the necessary church things, but I would be at school and I would be a totally different person. In my head, I probably thought, listen, when I'm 35 or whatever, I'll probably follow this Jesus thing. But right now, it doesn't make sense. And that's because I had a deep love for culture, I had a deep love for people, I had a deep love for music. But my turning point actually really came when a friend of mine, when I was 17 years old, decided that every single weekend he was just going to spend time with me. I don't think he preached to me. I don't think we did anything Christian. He just spent time with me. And actually seeing Christ in him compelled me to start asking the relevant questions and saying there's something different about him that I haven't seen in any other of my friends. I was like, I want that.
So welcome to the Follow Forward podcast, where we highlight real stories, global voices, and Christ-centered leaders. I'm your host once again, Tim Tucker, here in Cape Town, South Africa, and I'm really excited to be able to introduce my great friend, Luxolo Kentane, who's all the way in Johannesburg, South Africa. Lux, thank you for being willing to be part of this podcast.
Tim, normally I say, if you ask me, I do it. So happy to be here.
Well, no, I always try and start the episode by sharing some of the history, because this podcast for me is mostly about having mates on mission come and share their stories. The name is Follow Forward. The idea is that we are people with our eyes fixed on Christ, following his example. And that is the only qualification we have for leadership, that people should only follow us in as much as we are following the example of Christ. And we are a followership focus. So we're focused on our followers and empowering them so that they can surpass us. That's really our goal, and that's the stories we want to tell. So excited to hear your story this evening. But Golo, do you remember when we first met?
Geez, Tim, I think we probably met at the Gangster Cafe.
I wanted to check this with you. I remember meeting you for the first time at the Common Ground Cafe, because I think you were at Common Ground Church at the time.
Yes,
and someone was giving you a copy of my first book, The Pace Setter, if I remember rightly.
The Pace Setter. I think I've read all your books, which is probably extraordinary. So I think I got The Pace Setter, which is more discipleship, and at that time, you had just written your second book, the second book I know of, the one on leadership, Gravital.
Yeah, Gravital.
And so then I think we then met at the cafe. I think that's the time I probably met you. The other time was just out of the coincidence of meeting the people that you were meeting at the time.
We were introduced, bumped into one another, and then I obviously saw you. I began to see your performances, came down to your legacy events. I remember you running a legacy. So, you're an artist, I wanted to say influencer, but I don't mean that in that sense of the word. We've got to redeem some of these words. But you're someone who you're pioneering stuff. And right now you're with Alpha Southern Africa, who are our amazing partners and friends in ministry. But the funny thing was about our story is that, I think after meeting you and seeing you at those legacy events, I was like, oh man, this guy, he's a message guy through and through. He's someone who sits so well within our ministry. And eventually I got a call from a couple of the pastors in Cape Town who said to me, we think that Golo should be part of the message. We're going to make it happen. The problem was that was the year 2020.
That was the year 2020.
You started working for the message in January or February 2020. We did this incredible event at Every Nation, where you performed there, and you were getting on Creative Mission, and we were doing higher tours. We presented this incredible vision, and then you had to go back home to East London, didn't you, for some reason?
Yeah.
And then lockdown hit.
And at that time, the Higher Collective, and then we were sort of wrestling with what would this look like digitally. And so I think at the time with the team, we sort of explored how would Higher look like. And so then we sort of came up with the idea of Higher Live online as a way to give it to churches and to youth leaders at the time, sort of biblical teaching, but with some good creative arts. And so it's been a great journey, Tim, I guess, exploring with you, the rest of the team, of how do we reach our people in a way that they understand, and most importantly, reach young people who are far, but also who are some of the most difficult and hardest to reach places.
Yeah. Well, we're going to dig into some of that. Love to hear more of your heart around that. And, eventually that season with the message ended when you went over to Oxford for a season. We thought maybe we'd lost you forever to the South African shores. But you did come back, and we enjoy this friendship and partnership in ministry. But take me back to your origins story. You're an Eastern Cape boy. So tell me, what was life like for you growing up, and then particularly what was your moment in terms of coming to Christ?
Yeah. So I'm born in, I guess I'm born in a very small town called Mthatha in the Transkei in the Eastern Cape, to two loving parents, all who passionate about ministry. And I think my earliest memories of being young was seeing my dad do and be part of crusades. And majority of the time, most of those crusades were in villages all across the Eastern Cape. We did a whole lot of what we would call townships in South Africa as well. And so my earliest memories is being picked up out of school and sort of going there. I think I saw the love and passion for ministry, but I think maybe at the time, so that my parents were so invested and so involved in that it probably felt like they weren't as much involved in my life. And so I think I had this on and off relationship with Christ, in the sense that it always felt like there was a disconnect. I'd seen the faith in my parents, and I'd seen faith in people who were around my parents, but I'd never thought it really made any sense or relevance to me. And so it sort of felt that I had to switch myself off and switch my church persona on when I went to church or when I went to anything else. But it never felt like it translated. And so for the longest time in my teenage years, I had went to church and I did all the necessary church things, but I would be at school and I would be a totally different person. In my head, I probably thought, listen, when I'm 35 or whatever, I'll probably follow this Jesus thing. But right now, it doesn't make sense. And that's because I had a deep love for culture, I had a deep love for people, I had a deep love for music, I had a deep love of engaging with people naturally and normally on the ground, which is pretty different because I guess I was more in the space of healings and miracles and bold, charismatic preaching, which was followed by so amazing signs and wonders that I never felt like how do I take that to my friend at school who's wrestling with the relevance of the Bible in their own lives, or who are asking much deeper questions of, is this thing actually even really true? And what happens to the scriptures that weren't included? And can we really verify that Jesus actually was a historical figure? Or maybe just the natural questions of, if Christianity is really good, why is it that Christianity thrives in places where there's deprivation, where there's social ills, or where there's drunkenness? There seems to be a church in every street corner, but where there's abundance or riches, it feels like churches are harder to find. And so wrestling with the dynamics of the relevance of the scriptures in the Bible, but also wrestling with its relevance in a South African or an African context, has been a journey of my life. And so as I was wrestling with those sort of things, it always felt that I couldn't take those to church. It always felt like if I'd bring any of those questions, any of that, and even my love for music, for hip hop, it always used to be rejected as those are the things of the world. Just believe and see what God will do with your life. But my turning point actually really came when a friend of mine, when I was 17 years old, decided that every single weekend he was just going to spend time with me. I don't think he preached to me. I don't think we did anything Christian. He just spent time with me. And actually seeing Christ in him compelled me to start asking the relevant questions and saying, there's something different about him that I haven't seen in any other of my friends. There's no one else who would be sacrificing their time and invest in this relationship like this person is. And he unashamedly followed Jesus. And I was just left with the thing of, I want what he has. The peace and joy that he has, I want that. His ability to still enjoy his teenagehood, but still follow Christ wholeheartedly. I was like, I want that. And it was no major altar call moment. It was just that realization that I think my friend has something that I want. And so I said, well, it's Jesus. So I, in my room on a Thursday night, prayed my first sincere prayer to God. And the prayer felt like my knees were shaking. I didn't even know what to say or how to say it. But at that point, I realized that I was tired of the life that I was living and I needed something much better and true. And so alone in my room, I prayed. And I didn't think it was true because um, I was used to the context where someone has to fall down and olive oil needs to come out, and all of those are very good things. But I saw it, so it felt like I needed a spiritual high sense of a moment or some spiritual climax. And because I was just steadily praying in my room, I thought, okay, you know what? Let me call my dad. At that time, it felt like a very bad decision because I didn't want to ever call him because I thought if I ever did anything wrong, I know that he will tell me that, remember, you prayed that prayer and you said you want to follow Jesus. And so the last thing I wanted to do was to call my dad, but I just felt somehow, maybe now, I guess it's the Holy Spirit who was just convicting me that you can't walk this journey alone. Get some other people to help you. And so I called my dad, and I think he sheepishly also prayed for me. I don't even think he remembers that night. And since that day, it felt like I received a new lease on life, which meant following him, but I felt convicted to share what I had experienced and gone through with as many of my friends at the time and all over the world as well. So that's been the journey.
So I'm interested to know, so you having experienced this almost dualism in the church between, what was considered sacred activities versus secular activities, and feeling the tension of that such that you felt that wasn't for you. You'd rather explore, for want of a better language, what the world had to offer, and explore things that were in line with your passion, your gifting, etc. How did you then move towards actually having an integrated faith that saw your gifts and talents and passions as being aligned with God's call and purpose in your life? How did you make that that journey from this experience of dualism through to this, integration that you now embrace?
Yeah. Tim, I think I look at my life now and maybe, I ask myself as well, but I think at that time was because I fell in love with Jesus and telling the story of Jesus in a way that my friends understood, that I said, I'm going to tell the story of Jesus in a way that this culture understands, even if the church doesn't understand it. But my job is to just be a sharer of the good news. And so when you see one life changed, it then goes, oh man, it's working. And then you tell that person to share their story of what Jesus has done. And you're like, oh, it's working. And you go, okay, cool. So it's actually not even the medium. It's actually not even the pedestal. It's not even how you do it. It's obviously what you say, And then soon you realize, like, I'm joining the story of God. God is in the business of saving his people, and I get to join him in that. And if I could use whatever giftings I have, or opportunities I have, or privileges I have, oh man, there's no better story to write. I mean, at the time, I obviously used music because I never knew of any other people who were rapping and who followed Jesus. But then I said, okay, cool. The job is not for me to be famous or to get onto world stages. The job for me is to tell the story of Jesus in such a way that this culture and the current generation understands it. And so I know that they listen to hip hop, and they would be much more prone to listen to hip hop than to listen to a sermon. But how do I do that in such a way that my unsafe friends want to do it and they don't deem it as Christian hip hop, right? And so one went through the journey of saying, I can't do this if my friends firstly aren't non-believers. So my friends aren't people who necessarily believe. And so I decided I'm going to make music with my friends who did not necessarily believe. And I kept those friends. And actually some of those friends still have been my very good friends over the years. Some of them have crossed the line and some of them haven't. But I decided if I want to reach people who don't believe what I believe, in the creation and in the process, I need to include those people. But then the journey was never to use or to make the art the goal. The goal is always we want to tell the story of Jesus for Jesus to start changing lives. My first experience was I was 17. I decided, okay, cool. We're going to do what we call a church tour in my city called East London. And what we're going to do is Friday nights, we know that churches have youth groups. And so I started to speak to as many youth pastors I knew at the time. And so once a month, we would go to one church and we would just do hip hop with preaching at the end and a time for people to respond. I mean, I saw Jesus like just move in incredible ways. And then it was interesting that most of the pastors who even my dad knew at the time thought this was all of this was the devil's music. It's definitely not of God. It's definitely not even right. And so I remember sitting down with my dad at the time, and he was asking me how I feel about it. I said, well, the medium is different and it's not conventional, but if they don't want it, then we'll take it outside the church.
Mm-hmm. You'll be
And
like the
then I
Apostle
said,
Paul.
exactly. So I said, well, we'll take it outside the church. And so then got sound systems. And so we'd go down to taxi ranks, would go down straight through to the business districts. We would put out music and just do it. And then we then decided, okay, I'm going to print CDs at the time. And we'd walk the streets, give the CDs to people for free and tell them about Jesus. Because the point wasn't to try build anything. The point was to tell the story of Jesus in a way that this culture understood. And I think the reason why I do it and the reason why I still do it was because that's always been the goal. And yeah, so that's sort of been how and the why, I guess.
And you now work for Alpha South Africa, part of Alpha Africa, which has to work hand in hand with churches to give tools to enable evangelism and witness to happen. And yet, historically, you've had these experiences where churches, local bodies have not supported the initiatives and innovation that you were taking. How have you managed to not become cynical in that process? How do you still manage to take hands with the local churches? And what do you feel God is doing in this time? Is the shift happening in terms of the progress and particularly the heart for want of a better word, the lost, that the outsiders? Have you seen anything change in that, and how have you protected your heart in those years?
Yeah. I think it was helpful because I knew that I wasn't. I always knew I needed the church. I mean, there's no institution like the church. I guess the capital C church, as we would call it, the broader church. I always knew that one would always need it because of its influence and its place, and so one never wanted to create any necessary tension. And so I said, if this is causing a rift, then let me get out of the church, right? And then it's interesting, once that happens, those young people then end up going, what church could I go to? And then you could recommend them to the churches that are the ones that kicked you out or didn't even want you. And then it starts to change the conversation that, oh, okay, cool. This person actually, there is fruit in this because people are wanting or people are coming to either inquire or they are coming because they feel some level of conviction. And so over the years, I've actually seen how some of those relationships have overturned. And I guess the need for us to really fight for unity. I mean, we're not going to agree on everything. And I think once you're involved in the church for long enough, you realize that it looks like everything is up for for a fight. And
Yes, debate.
everything is up for a fight. And, but I just went, my posture should always be that we are there to serve the church, never to take away from the church and to add to the church. Because once we do that, once we start working together, there's so much more that we could definitely do together. So some of those relationships have been overturned and some relationships haven't been. But I think what has really helped me, Tim, is that I've been doing this for over 15 years. So over the time, people have actually seen there's some level of, I guess, love for young people, love for what we do. And I'm not really chasing a facade. I'm not really trying to do this for anything, fame or any level of acclaim. I'm really doing this because I want to, in my generation, make sure that we are creating resources that will help young people find faith and grow in the faith. And so I guess maybe the longevity has also really helped. And I guess my involvement now with Alpha has made me fall more in love with the church, with all of its issues and with all of its flaws. That it feels like God is still using this vehicle of the church to to bring renewal to the world, to create homes and communities for people. And so for me, it's the greatest joy to be a blessing and not actually want anything, but to actually just to give. And what I'm actually seeing is that obviously youth ministry has changed dramatically over, let's say, the last 15 years that I've been doing this. Youth ministry is definitely not the same. The numbers that we got 15 years are not the numbers that, I am seeing now in, let's say, youth groups or in church services. In some spaces, it's growing. But what it's obviously needing for me and for us is to go, our theology doesn't change with the culture, but our mode and our mediums have to evolve and have to change based on the needs and based on where culture is going at the time.
You were sharing about the church, the role of the church, and this tension between obviously loving and believing in the church, but also, recognizing there are challenges and we need to be people who are fostering unity. But within that space, then, how has that shaped your approach to leadership? And specifically, what, from a generational perspective, looking at maybe the generation before you, the style of leadership, a lot of upfront stuff that you spoke about. Um,
Yeah.
what are you sensing that's happening different? Are you sensing? And what are you sensing the kind of this current generation are looking for, or how are they defining leadership that is potentially different from previous generations?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably, I haven't given it a lot of thought. I think we're still living in a world of um people are still heavily following like influential figures, whether it's trends or it's influential speakers, leaders, pastors, etc. And I guess the awareness I have is that people get change and people follow leadership that they can actually feel or that they can touch, or they can actually feel its ripple effect and its influence. And I think there's a need for that a lot more. And so I think my generation, even that even the generations after me, are very much still influenced by what they can get on social media or they can get on their cell phones. And there's such a need to actually have leaders or people in your life that you can walk with. So I guess maybe part of the challenge is to go for leaders. Who are leaders actually intentionally investing in? And what does that look like? And is there a ripple effect of leaders' influence or even what they believe in the people that they have close to them, knowing that everyone has a capacity?
What would you have as your hopes and aspirations? I mean, I think all of us have kind of, these dreams or aspirations to see not just lives transformed. I say all of us, people like you and me, want to see not just lives transformed, but that lead to some tangible imprint of the kingdom on the communities we're working in. Firstly,
Mm.
do you sense you're seeing that in any way, shape, or form? And for you, aspirationally, what would you like to see? How do you see God using you or leading you towards that?
Yeah, I think that there's I guess in our world of people who love evangelism and telling people about Jesus is trying to figure out what does the ripple effect look like for our communities and the worlds that we're living in, and where it stops just being a personal thing, the sort of personal relationship people have with Jesus, but actually what does the ripple effect of that look like in our communities? And there needs to be these things that theologians call signposts that actually show that actually there's some people who believe in this God, and because of that, this is the result of it physically in our world. where our gospel must have tangible fruits and results in our world, and not just spiritual personal lives. I guess that's a very difficult thing because we live in a very self-centered world. But I think one of the ways, Tim, is our money, how we use our money, making sure that we're putting our money where I guess our hearts is, investing and putting in, making sure that we are shaping the next generation. Our time, I think it's investing in leaders, investing in people, the opportunity of volunteering or using your time or creating time to make sure that you are invested and placing yourself in places that will advance the kingdom and bring the shalom or the peace of God in people's lives. And and lastly, to always be focusing on the next generation. You know, always be
Yeah.
focusing on the next generation. I mean, I guess I'm a young guy, but still have a radical passion to say, but who's the next? And be making sure that we are taking ourselves out of our jobs as quickly as we can and raising up leaders and looking at the next generation, and on the next generation, even with the difficulties and even with sort of the shifting and the changing of culture, but radically investing in the next generation.
Appreciate your time, appreciate your input. It's been really valuable. You talked about investing into those who are going to come after us, and even those who are going to surpass us, which is really, true to the heart of what I'm trying to do with the podcast, what we're trying to do so much with the message across Africa. It's all about emerging leaders and them shaping the way we're going to do mission and ministry, moving ahead into the future. And we need to be listeners and learners within that process. So what advice would you be giving to someone starting out, early 20s or even teenagers starting out on this road of seeking to follow Christ, seeking to be faithful? They've got that passion, that zeal, yet we know that things can get tricky along the way. So, from your experience, what would your advice be?
I think Tim, the reason why maybe me and you get along was, I said, I think the same passions I have, I see it in Tim. Uh, love for leadership, the next generation, sort of urban mission, and wanting to change the world in some way or another. And as much as I can, I just said I need to get close to people like that because I know the fire can always run out. The complexities of life and the needs of life always just get in front of you. And so just placing yourself and putting yourself in front of people that sort of share the same passion, dreaming with them, and just always asking the question, how can I help you? How can I serve you? How can I be a part of what God is doing in your life? And so if I'm a young person and if I was starting all over again, I'd want to put myself in a place of I'm learning from other people who share the same passions and the same values, and I would just want to help them and support them, and make sure that my story, even if I don't get to do what I want to do, but I would be supporting people in what God has called them to do, and maybe that's what God could be calling me into, but also maybe as I do that, God will show me so much more. Um,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah, I
think
love
for
that.
for someone else who's not in their 20s, always to go, who can I help? And who can I invest in? And who actually could do what I'm doing much better? You know, I'm a product of a I'm a product of a school teacher and actually multiple school teachers telling me that God was going to do some incredible things through me, and them giving me platform, them giving me opportunities, them taking me to places that I could learn and develop has changed my life because then I said, oh, someone sees what I can't even say about myself. And so if you are not in that place, invest in someone else, give someone else an opportunity and allow those people to step into what God's called them into. And then we leave the fruits and all of that to God.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. And for me, that's so critical is to, we want to know the heart, to see the heart of someone, their passion first. So easy to look
Yes.
for the people who have the most charisma or just the
Yeah.
most talent or make the most noise. And those things are not bad in and of themselves, but Actually taking the time to see how someone's heart and life is being formed, how we see the character of Christ being formed within people. And I always talk about this unique combination, and I see this in you very much, this unique combination between having innovation, being willing to go for it and to take initiative. But sometimes people who only have innovation or initiative, they just make mistake after mistake after mistake, and they never learn from them. So we have to have this combination of teachability. We have to have a heart
Yeah.
that is willing to grow and to learn and to be teachable. And I think that's a dynamic combination, because you can take steps forward, but then have that reflect, learn, and grow, and then
Yeah.
continue forward again. Someone who's only teachable, they just want to be spoon-fed. They're sponges. They never grow.
Mm.
They
Yes.
never do anything, because they're just, and if we were all like that as Christians, we'd all just end up as fat and useless, waiting for heaven, and without any impact in the world. And we don't want to be like that, do we? We want to leave a mark. We want to say that there was something, a deposit of the kingdom of God, because of our lifestyle and because of our mission and calling. And so I see that, and I say, God, keep going. We want to continue to see the mark that you are leaving, of an imprint of the kingdom of heaven here on earth, wherever you go. And that's our hope. Thank you for listening to the Follow Forward podcast. This may have been my idea, but I worked with an awesome team to make it come to life. Thank you to Lucy for guest management, scheduling, and being a real gap filler. Jordan for taking over the guest management baton, as well as doing content production, scripting assistance, and editing of these podcasts. Alistair and my lovely wife, Christina, for technical production, and Taryn for taking behind-the-scenes content and crew support. Whether you're watching or listening, make sure to hit that subscribe button on whichever platform you are on, and share this episode with your friends so we can inspire even more people together. We release a new episode every Thursday, along with extra content to help you grow as a leader of people and a follower of Christ. Follow my Facebook page at Dr. Tim Tucker to access all the bonus content. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to send a DM or leave a comment letting us know what you enjoyed about the episode. God bless, and we'll see you next week.